Welcome back to Fantasy Football RPG, your go-to source for all things fantasy football. Grant us your expert analysis, top strategies, and the latest insights to help you dominate your league. Let's level up your game and dive into the nitty-gritty. Without further ado, let's get the action.
Welcome back to episode 110 of Fantasy Football RPG. I am zoomed way too far in. Sorry to the video listeners. You don't want to see all that. You don't need to. It's fine. I am joined by my fearless co-host, Evan. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, Mike? I got a meeting with the Titans tomorrow morning, bright and early, so maybe I'll be able to convince them to play winning football. I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, if it's still Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, it's going to be tough. Can you just check on Tajay for me? I miss him. I need him in my life.
Just get somebody to magically heal that knee, heal the lower extremities, just entire lower body. Let's just get a new Tajay lower body.
Who would have known that the guy with no ACLs would have lower body injuries? Really strange. Dude, you want to do a warm-up question from the chat? From Uncle Steve, the back-to-back champ of the Kashuba Family Football League. Did Russell Wilson make new fans this week? Listen, I didn't love it. I'll be the first to admit, may or may not have built a whole video so we can talk about Justin Fields. They look good. I don't think there were that many plays that were like, wow, he's the only quarterback in the room that can make them, but he played well enough that he should be the starter going forward, and I'm curious to see how this shakes out. How did you feel about Russ's debut?
Yeah, I mean, it was fine. I was going to say he didn't look like the last season of the Broncos' Russell Wilson, which is a plus.
Well, Sean Payton's an offensive guru, and everything that he touches turns to gold. You didn't know that?
Yeah. Right.
And it would be stupid if you question that in the offseason. But
he's definitely not magically a defensive guru somehow, some way.
Yeah. All right. So this week we're going to talk about, and hopefully people listen to this in the future. If you're coming from after October 22nd, come say hi. But we're going to talk about how to value draft picks. So in Dynasty, there's always like, oh, it's an early first. Oh, it's a mid first. Oh, it's a late first. I'm getting 3 first for this guy. I'm getting 2 for this guy. Like, what's going on with how these players and these picks should actually be valued? So we're going to break it down. We're going to go early, mid, late, and then we're going to go early second, late second. And then I want to talk a little bit about the differences between years. But so what are you looking for if you are acquiring an early first? What is the type of asset that you'd be willing to give up to get an early first?
Yeah, so I mean, when we're talking about going to get an early first, odds are you're probably not buying them mid-season. Odds are you had to have bought them before the season or right as the season was kicking off. If you can still get them right now, they are going to be extremely expensive. But just to talk about what I'm giving up, I'm trying not to give up quarterbacks. If you're asking me to give up a quarterback, it's a little bit harder of a sell for me. I'm looking to typically give up a premium running back, followed by a premium tight end, if that gets me there. And I'll tack on a little bit more on top of it to be able to get that premium early first-round pick. I prefer not to give up wide receivers, but if I have to, I'll give up a wide receiver. But I definitely, my personal way of Dynasty, I like to feel like I'm comfortable, feel like I'm set at quarterback. So I prefer and try everything I can to not do that.
Yeah. I think it depends on your team. And then also, was your no quarterback advice, is that purely for 2025 because of how the class works? Or is that like always you want to keep your quarterbacks in your room?
Yeah, no, that's generically just how I personally prefer to Dynasty. I don't want to think about quarterbacks because what that does is if I know that I'm set at quarterback, I can move back. I can have more flexibility. I can look for trade partners come the draft time that are looking for a quarterback. And I can say, oh, okay, this team needs a quarterback. They're trying to trade up to 1. I need to slide back to 3 or something of that nature. And I can pick up additional draft capital looking at teams 1 and 2 saying, they need quarterbacks. So odds are, predictability wise, that they are going to end up going quarterback. So I can still get the guy that I really want really early and pick up additional draft capital. That's the name of the game for me. I love thirds. You know that, Mike. I love those dart throw thirds. And in one of the other leagues that we're in, I also love seconds, especially this season.
Yeah, the running back class is deep. I'm going to pull up some rankings from our 2025 or 2024 season. Sorry, real quick. So, I mean, obviously you had, Neighbors, Harrison, Caleb, the works at the top. Like, going all the way to the second, you still had a couple of hits. Like Braylon Allen has looked pretty good. Talk about Ricky Pearsall maybe has an opportunity to be a league winner. Like, there's going to continue to be value as you work your way down. I clicked on a very bad link for that, but that's okay. But I'll find a different one real quick. Preston, I will never give up on Justin Fields. That is my curse. That is my burden I have to bear. It means that I don't know ball, but I will not give up on the super athletic guy with the super strong arm. Weird. But all right. Early first. I'm going to run through some names real quick, and you say early first in 2025 specifically, or this player. You said premium running backs. Top 3 pick, locked and loaded. This team is cheeks, and they already traded their first away to somebody else. That team wants to compete, so they want to get this player off your roster. Brees Hall.
Yes.
You'd rather have the first?
Yes.
Kenneth Walker.
Oh, heartbeat.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Gone. Yeah, sure.
Bijan Robinson.
That is probably the only one that I would have a little bit of pause for, and I would want that early first, and I would greedily ask for a third because they're just like giving candy to a baby for me. Just a nice little lollipop to just suck on as I'm dealing with that first overall top 3 pick.
Is this because you feel this strongly about Ashton Genty, Tet McMillan, and then either Judkins, whoever the RB2 ends up being?
No, it's because I feel this strongly about the flexibility that being at the top of the draft offers me in the offseason. The flexibility and looking at what people have traded once rookie fever starts to hit, because it's cyclical, Mike. We know this at this point. We see how it goes every single season. Trade deadline time, first round picks go down in value if they're mid to late first round picks, and they go up in value because you're basically at the end of their season and they're pawning off all the parts and you're tanking for the bottom. You have the casual fans that have been seeing a little bit more college football. They know names that are going to be in the future draft class. So yeah, definitely something that isn't specific to this year. We can talk even 26, we can talk 27, when those seasons come around, and that is just generically my stance on it. Okay.
So it sounds like running back, it's Bijan, or you would probably take an early first for them, which if my team is a fringe playoff team, like I'm probably riding the running back and seeing if I can squeak in first. But I understand the sentiment. We want to talk about tight ends. You're not going to get an early first for any of them other than Bowers. And like, if you have Bowers, just keep him and enjoy the ride. Wide receiver though.
Well, so real quick on that, Mike, we talked about the young tight ends, and remember how I also mentioned I'm okay with taking a young tight end or a position player and tacking on a little bit extra on top of it to be able to get to that. So if we say, okay, just say that you have a late second from some playoff team that you've already accumulated, tack that onto Trey McBride, Sam Laporta.
I don't know if you're getting it, man. Let me check our friends at Fantasy Calc real quick. If you guys haven't checked them out, they take sleepers data. So every time a trade gets completed, they scrape it off the top. And it provides a trade calculator that's not just keep trade cut where everyone is being silly and just clicking buttons. So let's say Trey McBride and a second. I don't think they break it down by early or late.
No, I was looking at that earlier. So our friends at Fantasy Calc, if you're listening, I I would strongly recommend trying to get on that early, late, mid game right now.
Yeah, if they can get it, so it's we're walking into week 8. Just take their current record and make that early, mid, late. It does say it would be an overpay, so I guess you can get. I don't know. I don't think a lot of leagues would do that, but we'll see. I mean, sometimes people are desperate, and with the tight end landscape right now, they might be buying. So, bottom line, early first. If you want to acquire an early first, you're going to need to give up a proven contributor at their position with lots of legs left on them. And it's going to be a hefty price to pay, but you think that it's worth it because of the flexibility it provides. Let's talk about a mid first. So this is a non-playoff, maybe like a fringe playoff team that you're like, if you make it, it's probably not going to go well for you. Where are you valuing? Like, what are some archetypes of players that you would give up for that?
We're talking the heavy production type of player so far this season. Guys that have been really good producers. Honestly, it sounds crazy and could be considered an overpay from some people, but I've seen Baker in a third for a below, currently outside of playoff team that's trying to get into the playoffs.
Well, Baker Mayfield, probably top 10 dynasty quarterback right now.
Okay.
Not actually, but like maybe we could talk about that in another episode. So you're saying proven contributor at a position of need for the other team. I think that makes sense. What are some, let's go through some other names you would look at here. So would you rather have a mid first or
DK Metcalf?
Oh, brother. So I think this is an important discussion. As your team is moving forward, you have to evaluate, am I in true title contention this year? If you are fighting tooth and nail just to get to the playoffs, I'd probably ask for second sprinkled on top. Bear with me, I have a cough right now. But I'd ask for a little sprinkle on top, but I don't think that's unreasonable. So if I'm competing, I would obviously want, Metcalf. But
and this is the perfect time to use sleeper to your advantage. Go look at the max points for in your league to be able to isolate those teams that may have a currently 5-2 record, but have been putting up bottom 3 max points for, and they're just getting either lucky with their choices. They're basically thin on their benches. So they're only dealing with guys that are in their lineups. So bye weeks come, they're going to start struggling there. Injuries start to occur. All of a sudden, that pick that goes from a playoff pick or fringe playoff pick now floats into that potentially top 6 range. You want to take those calculated risks in this mid zone, which is what I love looking at, love doing when evaluating teams.
Yep. I'm going to throw out a couple of names that I think are slam dunks for both of us, like James Cook. First, right?
Yeah.
Christian McCaffrey, you're not in the playoffs.
Yeah, that's easy.
Yep. Fun one. Perpetually overvalued and has dropped 10 spots in dynasty value. Chris Olave.
You're pulling on my heartstrings here because I do love me some Chris Olave because his intended air yards every single season are crazy.
Oh, he's the air yard king.
He really is, really is. But yeah, that's accurate. You want to go with getting the rookie pick at this point because we've seen what Olave has done. We've seen what he is with Carr in that offense. And honestly, with the cap situation, not much is probably going to change in that offense in the coming seasons.
Yep. Zay Flowers, last one, and we'll talk about late first.
Easy. That's mid first, clearly for me.
Okay. I think he's fine for what he is. He's going to be a perpetual wide receiver too. There, you go from these locked and loaded great prospects. Like you go from the Marv, Malik, Jaden tier, and then you're like Quentin Johnston range a couple of years ago. Like Zay Flowers range a couple of years ago. Like maybe you get a base hit but this was also the Brian Thomas range this past season, so there are gems to be had. I think you were incurring risk if you take the pick over Zay Flowers, but chase the risk if that's the type of dynasty gamer you want to be. This is truly like, it's a game. Have fun with it.
Think about the flexibility though, Mike. Like that is what my game, whenever I'm trying to trade for picks, is about. It's about getting me flexible assets for the offseason to be able to move around, to be able to move up a pick, to be able to move up 2 picks when I isolate kind of that layer, hopefully a little bit earlier than everybody else. So,
yeah. All right, let's move on to, so mid picks. We talked, there's a couple of names you could swing out there. You're looking for, maybe a player that's overvalued, but not pushing you over the edge. So you can try and, take those fun risks. All right. Now it's a late first. This is a clear title run team. They are going for it. What kind of player should you be looking for? Like right now, if you talk to the Derrick Henry manager and they're out of the playoffs, they want a late first. I don't think either of us are on board with sending that, but what are some players that you would look for to acquire a late first right now?
oh man, late first, people have realized, and maybe this is wrong, but people have realized that late first, there's just such a giant drop off. Like typically people have that clear cut top 6. Sometimes it'll float to top 8. Every once in a while, you'll get to that top 10 range. You don't really hear anybody saying, yep, there is 12 locked and loaded players in this class. So what are you going to end up doing if you end up getting that 10, 11, 12 position, which is great, fantastic, good job on competing all season, good job on making a deep playoff run. Really happy for that team. It's a lot of fun to be in playoff competition.
We like to win.
Yeah, winning is fun. But when it comes down to the offseason, now you start getting into the questionable territory of, okay, do I want to move out of this slot for somebody that some team has conviction? Some team always ends up having conviction on somebody. Do I want to move out of this slot to go back to a mid-second that I don't really care a ton about and just trying to get some depth pieces for my team? Am I trying to move off of that in the offseason? So yeah, thinking about all of that is really where I run into. What I love to do with my late first is try and think about the teams that are gonna be mid and try and send my 111, 112 for their 26 first and a 26 third. You're looking at them saying, oh yeah, I can sell you. Oh yeah, this first round pick, this is going to make your team immediately better. So obviously your team is only going to go up in value. But if I'm looking at it saying, oh, well, late first round picks typically don't provide that much year 1 value. Typically, they're going to be a year 2 type of pick or later. They're typically guys that you're going to have to figure out your fantasy team around. You're not going to be starting them any week. They're going to be fringe starters. You're going to be having just another player to be able to try and figure out every single week, is this a guy that I start? So I'm going to try and take a chance, a calculated chance. I'm not just swinging for whoever is, 105, 106 in this year's draft. I'm going to actually look at the roster, digest the roster, and make a educated assumption, educated guess in doing my brain calculus over here, just going to Rain Man it. And those are the teams that I'm going to try and go after. And if they take it, great. I lose out on a pick this year, but at the same time, I got a flexible asset for the future, which, what did we just mention? Oh, if that just so happens to end up being an early first round pick in the following season, you already made a deep playoff run this year. You didn't get any help to try and set up your team better for the following year, but you got, come the deadline, that valuable piece that can go get you Breece Hall.
Yeah. And listen, we love talking about calculated risks. If you want to make more calculated risks, you need to be 18 or over. Head over to BetMGM. Use code LWS250 for $250 in bonus bets. If you have a problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Please be responsible. But we like to talk about calculated risks. While we're talking about that, let's talk about the time value of dynasty rookie picks. So a lot of guys, they get scared off. They're like, "Ooh, I really want a first this year," or "Oh, I really want a first in this certain class." How should dynasty gamers value a 25, 26, 27? Let's not talk about the strengths of the classes because that's, very specific to right now. But let's talk about how should they value a this year pick versus a next year pick.
Yeah, so I mean, statistically, when you look at it, a late first in this coming draft, being 2025, is generically typically worth a mid in the following season. So it's worth a mid first in the following season. And if you go 2 seasons out, now it bumps up to an early first in 2027. 2027, trying to project out that far in your league, Godspeed if you're trying to Rain Man that, because there are so many variables to try and be able to do that it is incredibly difficult, and you are taking on a mountain, not a molehill. We try not to make mountains out of molehills over here, but you are actually taking on a literal mountain when you start thinking that far ahead. So try and keep it to 1 year. If you're doing that and trying to go get those 27 picks already, think about guys that pick is a throw in. Like, don't think about that pick as a highly, highly valuable asset because, one, time value, it's going to take a long time for it to come to fruition and come to actual evaluation. If you want to think of it in stock terms, think of it like a long-term option, betting on something to occur a long time in the future.
You just lost half of our listeners and me.
All right. Well, that's my nerd out for the night. So yeah, but hopefully that helps to explain how I'm thinking about it, Mike, especially with first round picks. Second round picks, whole different animal, but first round picks are that highly coveted asset.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about this discussion, and also just like us on the show, I view those picks completely differently. So I think a 2025 first should be similarly, if not almost equal value to a 2026 first. That's purely speaking about the value of the pick, not specifically the classes. I think we feel the 25 class is going to be stronger for fantasy, but predicting that out is pretty tough. But when we're trying to make a decision between, I want to go acquire this pick, I want to go get this, and they say, I'll do a 26 instead of a 25. Yes, you do have to wait a year, but that's a year with just money in your pocket. If you want to take that pick and turn it into something else later, it's only going to gain value. You have a fluid asset. Versus if you make that pick and you listen to some other stinky show and they tell you to draft Keon Coleman at the 1A8, that's now a dead asset. Like if they tell you to go draft Quentin Johnston because he's going to be a rock star, which was me because I'm stupid. Like there are plenty of opportunities for that to disappear versus the pick has standalone value on its own, which can be valuable to teams.
I will also say historically, when you look at pick value graphs, whether you trust them or not, historically, until you get to about September, the picks typically stay pretty flat in value. So when you're looking at it, you're not really gaining any value until you start getting to week 4, week 5 of the season.
I'm saying how the market values it versus what I would recommend to people at home. Like if you can only acquire a 2026 instead of a 2025 first, view it similarly, like try and gauge that team and see like, are they starting Aaron Jones and Derrick Henry at running back? Like a 2027 first, it's gonna be spicy. But there's gonna be opportunities for you to maybe gain value in pick numbers, like it's going to say first rather than second, or it's going to say, second rather than third. But that will pay off in the long run. Important note, as long as you can trust your league. RPG league never folded. We've never had an unfilled orphan over the offseason. We've been very lucky with that. Corey does a great job running those leagues. But if you can't trust that league, then maybe get a little more loosey-goosey with your 26 and 27s. Because sometimes leagues fold, and that stinks. But cool. One of our listeners wanted an example. I don't know what they want an example of, but we love you and thank you for listening. Let's talk about early twos. So first, we try and separate it early, mid, late. Twos, it's like normally a pretty big range from almost the 1010 to the 206 of rookie rankings. Like you're talking about late day 1, early day 2 picks that you're like, this guy could be a really big contributor on his team, or he could just be sent to the shadow realm and never seen again. How do you value some of those non-playoff? Oh, U seasons 2022, 2023. Here, let's talk about this. So, to get ready for the 2024 season, when I was making trades, so I took over a abomination of a rebuild in 2022, where it had Ryan Tannehill and Jameis Winston at quarterback. The only player scoring points other than them was Derrick Henry. Everything else was just decimated. So I wasn't able to acquire a whole ton of like 2023 picks, 2022 picks. Like I wasn't able to get like the new sexy toys. But I was able to be like, hey, let me send you this guy. Send me a 2023 pick. Send me a 2024 pick. And then those teams ended up being way better than we thought they would be. And because the market plays the way that it does, sometimes I was able to send like, I will send you this 111 and get a random 2024 pick. I will get another dice roll in a 2025 pick. The team's still not ready to compete. So it gives you a chance to re-roll, kick the can down the road. If you keep doing that, it ends in a perpetual rebuild, which is not what you want to do. I set a goal of 2025. Like I'm turning and burning now. And now I have like a loaded wide receiver room, 3 like cornerstone quarterbacks. I don't have a running back with a name on it. Like Justy Sill's my running back one. But by valuing those picks the same in my head, I know the market doesn't value them that way. I was able to kick that can down the road, get higher shots, get more shots. Like sometimes you can get a first and a second. Sometimes you can get a first and a player. That allowed the rebuild to be a little stronger. How do you feel about using your perspective? So you are getting ready for the 2024 season. You took over a horrific orphan in 2022. How are you trying to do that?
Yeah, so you start taking a horrific orphan. You start in 2022. You got to figure out your league. So obviously, that's the first thing you always do on an orphan. You got to figure out, okay, am I actually going to be able to get any kind of value, or are people just going to see me coming in and being like, oh, he's going to fire sale? Because everybody fire sales whenever they take over an orphan. So maybe right away may not be the perfect time, may not be the right time to really be able to sell. Maybe you need to kind of sit on your team a little bit, just kind of let it cook, let it marinate, let everybody else in the league just start casually sending offers. But yeah, I'm looking at it as a numbers game, and I'm immediately looking at it as a quantity of throw-in picks. So give me the chance to be able to move back a season, to be able to get additional throw-ins, to be able to give me that 3%, 4%, 5% chance when we start talking about those 3rd and 4th round picks to be able to hit and to be able to get somebody that's actually really useful to my roster. So I'm looking at those guys. I'm expecting 3rd and 4th round picks, specifically 3rd round picks. I'm expecting them to be depth guys on my roster that I can package up together to be able to hopefully get somebody that is a fringe starter at the time when I'm going to be able to compete. So very much I'm with you, Mike. Do not get into the perpetual rebuild mode. It sucks when that happens. You constantly feeling like a donation because you're just giving money to the league one year after another. And you have to set some kind of attainable goal saying, okay, 3 years from now, when I take over this orphan here, 3 years from now, I'm trading picks, I'm going in, I'm making this work. Or unfortunately, sometimes things just don't work out, and you have to try and make a financial assessment at that time and a time value assessment as well. Is it worth your personal time to continue trying?
Yeah, completely fair. We have another question in the chat, and then we'll start talking about what twos are worth to us. So Andre, thanks for listening to the show. He's in win now mode. Which wide receivers would you target? So he has Higgins, Reed, Adams, Moore, Marv, Leggett, Waddle, and QJ. So that sounds like a very good wide receiver room, if I'm being honest. So some cheaper contributors that I would look at maybe grabbing. I mean, off the dome, I was going to say Godwin because I was trying to sell him before he got hurt. Like nobody wanted to buy the wide receiver one, but that would have been horrible advice. I went up for Deebo Samuel, currently dealing with pneumonia. I think his value is going to jump up now that Ayuk is out, but maybe you can sneak in a little bit of value there. What are some other wide receivers that come to mind for you?
I mean, if you really want to get spicy, and we're talking Dynasty here, assuming that it's Dynasty, honestly, if it's a win now team, I'm not above trading Marvin Harrison Jr. for A.J. Brown in a third.
I love that idea. Sell Marv on the name value, on the insulated value that he has as an early pick. It's not giving you points right now. Go get something more. So that's great. I want to bring up another one. Mike Evans, pretty low down on the list. Godwin's out, perpetually good. Your team is likely good enough that you're going to make the playoffs anyway. Like, go get Mike when he's trying to chase his 17th 1,000-yard season in a row with no Chris Godwin against the Giants. Like, there's going to be a lot of great things.
Yeah, the 3 weeks that he's expected to miss for Evans will suppress his value right now. And honestly, that's even a trade that you can probably get done with another team that you're competing against for a playoff spot. Now, statistically, do you want to do that? That's going to be a league opinion. That's going to be something to really think about. If you have the flexibility, 6-1 already in playoffs, like, let's get thinking about playoff mode here.
Go send Marv to the Nico Collins owner with a third sprinkled on top, like maybe a little, and be like, what do you think about this? See if they come back and say just 1 for 1. I would take Nico over Marv right now.
Yeah, Nico's going to come back. I mean, Puka's going to be another one. I know it's scary investing in Puka right now, but his value is suppressed. Cup might get traded on top of it. So there's
Cool.
a lot of things.
I don't think the Cup thing is real, but that's okay.
I don't really think so either personally, but
All
the
right,
rumors
we have
about
a couple of questions from Pete, which maybe we'll hit during this because we're going to talk about early and late seconds. So you are a non-playoff team, or the team has already swapped a couple of picks in the offseason. Now you are sitting on a non-playoff too. How are you valuing that pick as opposed to some players around the league or your roster requirements?
Yeah, non-playoff too. In most years, that is somebody who just really won't be helpful for this coming season.
But you love thirds.
And honestly, because thirds are so much cheaper. Just the name value of a second to a competing playoff team, for whatever reason, is so much higher in fantasy gamers' minds than a third. And that's why I love thirds, because thirds, statistically, we're talking about a 10% maybe chance, somewhere in there, 7 to 10% of making a noticeable difference on your roster. Okay, well, now if I have 5 shots at that 7 to 10%, great. And they were all just free throw-ins. So, I'm not a huge fan. I'm doing everything I can personally to be shipping off those playoff seconds, especially if I'm a win now team. Because I just don't think that those guys are statistically going to make a difference on my roster in the next 2 years, which if I'm currently a playoff team, it makes me think that my window is actually right now and didn't just open. So I'm trying to win the whole thing, trying to put the best team on the screen as possible.
Put it on the field.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm looking at Dynasty rookie ADP from 2021 to 2024. The difference between a early second, late second, early third, even late first in some of these cases, it's day 2 wide receivers, day 2 running backs that are buried, and day 3 running backs.
Yep.
Those sound like all the same probability of hitting to me. So if you can turn that early second into a player and a third, if you can turn that player that pick into a contributor for your team right now, which I think you could probably get Najee Harris for, which Pete, thanks for asking. Dude, he had a great game, but you're looking at a running back with no contract who the community just generally hates. Like, if you can get a first jump on it, I don't think you can. If you can get an early second jump on it, a second and a third?
Playoff second, playoff third. I mean, sure, if I need points off my roster. And I mean, how much more are you really realistically going to get for Najee? Because that's about what the community is paying for him right now.
So what I think he is worth to a team, he is a floor play running back 2. You're plugging him in there. You're going to get somewhere between 8 and 20 points. More often than not, closer to 8. But he's going to keep your team afloat, and he's reliable. So if you're looking for that.
He is the Kirk Cousins of running backs.
We won't take Kirk Cousins slander on here. We'll take Najee Harris slander, though. I have folded there. But let's talk about playoff second. We just rolled in playoff late seconds and early thirds all into one. It's normally one giant tier of draft capital not mattering, backfield's not mattering. The entire situation is just one giant glob. So yeah, maybe get an early second because then you can flip it for a late second and a third later. But otherwise, like, it's name value, not actual player value when we're looking at probabilities of players hitting. Is that fair?
And yeah, and once again, you know, we're talking, just look back at this previous season draft, all right? Who was going in the early second? We're talking Benson. We're talking Ladd. We're talking Ladd creeped into the late first. I get
that. He did. Dad's for Ladd, baby.
But we're also talking Brooks in most cases, also kind of sneaked into the late first at some point. So what do all those guys have in common, though? They're guys that we didn't really expect much from year one. So once again, if you're a competing team with those picks, and now all of a sudden you're drafting a rookie that you're not expecting to do much for you in the first year, we're starting to get outside your window of competition, your window of going for a chip, when those guys are actually going to be fully active on your roster.
Yep. So it seems to me like we feel very similarly about early, late, and early thirds. Juwan Jennings, this is the kind of player that I want to talk about with your third and late second round picks. It's going to help your team now, we think. It's either him or Ricky. I think that added element of like whether or not he's going to help is going to hurt his value. But great route runner, third and Juwan, great thing to say when he catches the ball. What more are you looking for in a fantasy player? So I would send a playoff second if I need a wide receiver to plug and play now. But I don't think you're getting much more than that in any situation. And I think I'm probably the most bullish on Juwan.
Yeah, you're definitely more bullish than me.
Well, you said KJ Osborne was worth a second a couple months
ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scored a touchdown this weekend. That was nice.
We don't talk too much about that. But regardless, yeah, the conversation around Juwan is very interesting because of the injuries that have occurred, because of the nicks that have always been there. You always knew Kittle was going to be banged up. You always knew CMC is going to be a little banged up. You always knew Debo is going to be a little banged up. I really think, though, that there is something in how much they like Ricky Pearsall, which makes me think that Juwan is less valuable to a playoff team because he's going to be less utilized in the fantasy playoffs. We'll see.
Yes. Forgive me. When I say playoff first, I mean to like make your seed higher. Ideally, if you're a playoff first, like you're getting Nico back, you just got AJ Brown back, you got Malik Neighbors by some stroke of genius. Don't start him week 14. Now he's going to go for 100 points week 14. But this week against the Chiefs, receiving leaders for the 49ers. George Kittle, and then a whole list of names: Jacob Cowing, Ayuk before he got hurt, Ricky Pearsall, who had 5 targets for 3 receptions and 21 yards. That's pretty good. But Jennings wasn't active.
It was garbage time.
Yeah. Jennings wasn't active. I think there's going to be a lot to sift through. So if you can go get him for a 3rd and a 4th, if you can get him for some of those picks that some people feel are throwaways, Evan feels are exciting, like there are opportunities to grab him, but I don't think you're getting more than a playoff first anywhere. And that's like the most I would be willing to pay.
Third rounders in season for me are that little candy to be able to go get a spot start.
Can you throw a third? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's going back to last year as an example, when a running back goes down, you have that 2 starts. You're like, oh, he pulled his hamstring. Oh, okay. I got 2 starts coming in out of the backup. Let me just throw a third over there. Like, let me get 2 starts of a locked and loaded guy that's going to be getting the lion's share, and I'll move on.
Yep. And then let's talk about the last one. And then honestly, we can just wrap it up. But 4th round picks. Dude, these are dart throws. These are vibes that are going on your taxi squad. If they hit, you're a genius. If they don't, no one will ever remember. But a couple of 4th round picks from last year. Eric All, Jordan Whittington, who was useful for a little bit, Spencer Rattler, the future starter in New Orleans. Like, you can get a quarterback handcuff, running backs and wide receivers like with a path, but don't expect much more. So I'm free flowing with 4ths. Like if I'm at the goal line for a trade and I'm like, I don't know, man, I just need a little more. Can you throw on a 4th? That's great, because then you have like a little more in your treasure chest to try and move up into the 3rd, to try and move, like sprinkle that on top later to get something else. But expecting anything out of a 4th round pick is dangerous.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the example that you used is perfect. I mean, Spencer Rattler. All right. When Rattler was named the starter, what were you trading in for? A 3rd and a 4th. So now I'm getting the 4th back that I just invested, and I'm getting a 3rd on top of it. I'm getting 2 re-rolls for a guy that it's profit. You're just taking the profit. And that's exactly what I want to do with any 4th round picks, because honestly, I'm expecting my 4th round picks to be roster cloggers. And if the 2% chance that they actually hit and become something useful actually comes true, then I will happily get out of anybody that was a 4th round pick. Going back to 3rds, I know in one league we had a mid-3rd that I took Braylon Allen, flipped him to Eric for a 2nd.
It's a win.
Yeah. I'm taking found money, and I'm going to re-roll, and I'm going to trust my judgment, trust the flexibility that getting those extra picks allow me.
Yep. Which is why you got to listen to the guys that are watching the film, which is unfortunately me and Evan, because we don't have much else to do. So watch the film studies. There's an Ashton Genty one up now. I'm going to try to do a Quinshon Judkins one this weekend because Buzz Walker asked for one. Is there anything else you want to say about the time value of picks, how to value picks, or just say bye to our listeners?
Know your league. Know if it's people that you've been playing fantasy football with for years. Know if a large chunk of it is people you've been playing fantasy football with for years. There have been so many leagues that I've just found on Reddit over the years, or, found somewhere else. So, a league mate of a league mate is trying to start this one. I know nobody in it. And what happens? Oh, gee, what a surprise. After year 2, it folds. Those are tough. Those are tough pills to swallow, especially if you know that you're the type of manager that likes to just go grab a bunch of picks early on. Just say, okay, I'm just going to kind of handcuff the league and try and just accrue assets for the future. It's a lot more fun when you know people in the league. Sure, it's fun to get in these random leagues and take people's money when you can. And you also don't feel as bad trying to drop out of them if, your team ends up flopping. We don't advocate for that by any way, shape, or form.
I've never left an orphan. Just saying.
Oh, I've left plenty.
We left the one, which was the charity league that the guy was very mad at me about. But that's a story for another time. if you need help filling orphans, tag us on Twitter. You can find me at FF Mike Cash. You can find Evan at FFRPG Pod. Head over to our friends at Reddit Fantasy Football. They've been great recently. They just reached, I think, what was it, 3 million subscribers? They're crushing it. So go say hi to them and, I don't know, drink W. Use code FFRPG. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football RPG Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at FFRPGPod and at FF Mike Cash with a K. Don't let the goblins get you. See you next week.